So, and one thing I already established that I enjoyed a good conversation, but also we've always done a good job of having conversations, whether they're hard conversations, deep conversations, introspective. We've covered some really difficult topics and even navigating things like monetizing the channel and stuff that, people get up in arms about. We navigated that as a community together, and we have done well. We've covered some hard stuff. And not to say that today's going to be hard, but I do think it's a topic that is worthy of discussion, and I would love to hear what people have to say. Okay? That's kind of why we're here. Intrigued? Me too. I'm intrigued to hear what people will say. So I'm gonna kick this off with a couple of questions. Now, without giving too much context, because I could see this 100 different ways, and the context doesn't really matter yet, but I'll be curious to hear what you have to say. Now, understand, this is a community conversation. This is a community discussion. When I'm asking you these questions, I want you to give your honest answer, okay? I want to make that super clear. Now, you can give your opinions and you can give your answers, but I feel like everybody should be able to do that respectfully, okay? I preface this conversation because sometimes you get into a big conversation, it's only a matter, sometimes there's a very fine line between like, well, that's my opinion, and it just gets like, whoa, bro, slow down. We just chatting, okay? Just, the rules here. Everybody's respectful to everybody else. So keep that in mind, okay? So here's the first thing I want to ask you. Now, actually, before I even ask the question, one of the rules that we have in Discord that will most likely, if not absolutely apply today is that, like, we have a rant and event channel where you can kind of go in there and just blah, and you can just word vomit all of your frustration, right? And we're okay with that because Lulu very cleverly, and she understands people more than most of us, if not all of us. Lulu knows that if you don't create a space like that, that energy will kind of bleed into the other channels. It just happens. So if you give people a space to do that, it saves the rest of the community that's not really here for that, right? And one of the rules of that rant channel is that you can do that, but we don't want you to name people. You can express frustrations about, the system or like the situation, but we don't want you to like target people. We don't want you to attack people. We don't want you to like name people, even if it doesn't matter if it's somebody that's in the Discord specifically, obviously, or even celebrities. We don't want you like targeting people. And that's for obvious reasons, okay? So that being said, when I ask you these questions, I want you to do your best in your answers to not name people. I'm not looking for specific answers of artists or groups. I'm talking about, I want you to generalize as much as possible. And I kind of want to get your feelings. I want to get your tendrils on things and see where we might line up, differ, and just as a whole, see where the community sits, okay? I know that's a lot of preface, but I think it's important as some context, okay? Here's the first question I'll ask you. You have to, I have to kind of force this a specific way. So I want you to take your favorite music groups, okay? And I want you to like put them, the ones that you love so much that they can do no wrong. I want you to take them out of your brain and I want you to put them on the shelf, okay? You with me? Take them out. They're not part of the conversation. Put them on the shelf, okay? And that's going to leave everybody else, okay? People that have not worked their way into your brain housing group. And for the sake of simplicity, let's compartmentalize even further. You take all those favorite groups, idols, artists that you have, they're on the shelf. This first part of the question, I only want you to think of like boy groups, Okay, we're going to filter down. Boy groups. When you think of boy groups that have not earned their way into your heart, into your brain, what have you found are things that you don't like about other groups? Again, don't name anybody. It doesn't matter. I'm talking generally speaking, you watch videos, you listen to songs, and they don't earn your love yet because why? What things do you hear, see, feel? What, you know what I mean? Like what do you feel they're missing? What do you feel like is wrong? Why don't they earn their place in your heart yet? I know that's a tricky question, and it's probably going to involve some typing. All right, certain music styles they use, some vocalist tones. No, not the ones on your shelf, the ones that are left over. It is a strange question. If it seems superficial, like the lyrics don't say anything. Sometimes the content feels forced to me and forced by them, like the spark in those people is dead. That's a good one. I don't like dark concepts or music, too giddy and bubbly. I tend to compare them with my favorites, preference of style. For some reason, they sound similar to me. It just doesn't stand out. Depth of lyrics, genres, they feel disingenuous, not my vibe, not my particular taste. Everything feels repetitive. I can't connect to their songs. Too many members to try and learn. That's a different one. I totally agree with, by the way, sometimes. Not my type of concept. Members who are physically too similar, making it hard to figure out who's who. It feels like work. Feels too cookie cutter sometimes. Unauthentic. I tend to not like repetitive songs or songs that have no depth. Too much show, not enough meat. Good way to put it. Okay. It sounds more like it was made just to be catchy rather than artistic creation or expression. And then it rarely appeals to me. I can't feel any emotions in the vocal or rap. Okay. When there are too many young teenagers or children in the group. Being told you are only allowed to like one group and not the other when both groups are great. Fandoms turn me off. Vocals feel unpleasant, generic, empty music or lyrics. Triggers misophonia. Yep, we know that too well. No concept, feels robotic. Just don't feel a spark. Okay, these are really good answers. This is kind of what I was hoping. I wanted some breadth to the answers. Sometimes it's the members themselves. Some come off as cocky. If I like more than one group, I just like it. Actually, I don't like when people tell me what to like or not like. Furchy, it's a great answer. All the above. Yep. Okay. So if you're just coming in, the first question that I've asked in this community discussion is, if you take your favorite groups out of the equation and you just think about the remaining groups that are left over, as a massive generalization, what stops you from loving those groups? Do you feel like they're missing something? What don't you love? And again, without naming groups or artists, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, these are really great answers. Yep. As a multi-stan, we should be able to like who we like, and we should do it respectfully. Agreed. Yep. Yeah, my whole first year of doing this and loving BTS and immersing myself in BTS content, multi was a slur, basically. Like it was absolutely unheard of. You will not listen to other music. Yep. Or you'll be canceled. When they look like they're not having fun, they don't want to be an idol and just want to be famous. Okay? Very nice. Very, very good answers. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Really, really good. That's a really good start. Okay. So now let's go Let's go a little deeper. So we have our favorites that we love on the shelf. We have compartmentalized a little bit, and you have provided all of your answers for specifically boy groups on why you tend not to, like what stops you from loving those groups. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. Now, the next box that we pull up is going to be the same question, but for girl groups. What stops you when a girl group pops up? What stops you from loving that group? Right? You might have a couple girl groups up here, boy groups up here, but girl groups come up, same question. What stops you from loving them? What don't you like about girl groups? Too bubbly. You can sometimes tell that agencies are creating groups that are the same, okay? Too bubblegum, too birdy, okay, too birdy. The clothing, when having to be sexy is more important than the music. Girl groups are mostly too bubbly, it's not my cup of tea, not unique enough of a sound. Very young and over-sexualized, too girly and boppy, or boopy, I guess, funny enough. I want to see versatile and darker themes. Too sexualized. It's too poppy and not about talent. Usually vocal tone. I prefer a deeper register, but I try to give them a fair listen. It feels like objectification is the point. Too many different groups. Same thing as boy groups, it's just concept matching. Yeah, you could have the same answer as the previous question. It doesn't have to be different. It could be the exact same answer. Dehumanization of women, superficiality, too girly in a stereotypical sense. Why don't they get some proper dance moves and not just delicate, sexy moves? I prefer lower voices. Girl group feel like they are in this similar box, which is sad. Tones are too similar, not edgy enough. Superficial, too cute, too sexualized. The tone of the voice is very similar in most groups. Visuals are prioritized over talent. I'm more on boy bands than girl bands. Sexy gets in the way. Same thing as boy groups, disingenuous, or I just don't have time to learn about them. Feel like they're trying to be something they're not, and they don't always seem comfy in their songs, dances, and clothes. How bubbly all the music ends up being, I'd like darker type better. They are often forced to be cute instead of real. Same as boy groups, lack of a concept. They don't have their own persona, but conform to the expectations of the general public. Unhealthy body standards and clothing is tiny. Okay. When it feels like they need to focus more on how they look, so it looks like it takes the fun out of it for them. Stereotypical female roles. Interesting. Okay. So now that so many people, I can't say everyone, I'll just say everyone. So now everybody's answered both questions between boy groups and girl groups. And again, always give me an honest answer. It's not going to do us any good to have discussions like this if you're just saying what you think I want to hear or what they want to hear or what you think is going to prevent conflict or whatever. Like, it's conflict. Like, we'll be fine. It's going to be fine. You stay respectful, no worries. So now that I've asked you both of those questions, boy groups, girl groups, do you feel like there was some significant overlap in the answers between those two things? Yes or no? Some, yes, no, many, yes, some not a lot. Okay. Quite a few, yep. Sort of balanced. Okay. Yeah, a large portion of it applies to both. Okay. Okay. Yes, because both my answers revolve around not the group themselves, but how people perceive them, aka fandom, industry, society. Not to offend anyone, but it often bothers me when certain people complain about female performers being sexualized, while that exact same person is a huge fan of boy groups being overtly sexual and seductive. Interesting. Girl groups had the one thing of over sexualized and boys didn't. Okay, yeah, so it's not entirely overlapped. So there are some differences, sure. It is the same industry, so there's bound to be a lot of overlap since it's just how the industry works. For sure. Okay. Thank you for making me think, made me learn a thing about myself. Well, we're just getting started, so hopefully you learn something today. Mm-hmm. Some differences, both treated differently as well. The sexy attitude is okay, but the childlike mixing it, not my vibe. Okay. So here's where I want to take this question now. Okay. And this is organically what I feel like is the bloop, the light bulb where we're currently at. Somebody said, put some clothes on those girls. And then somebody said, so put the shirts back on the boys too, right? What are your thoughts? Is there a difference? What's the difference? Should there be a difference? Should it be the same? What's your opinion? I'm literally asking. I'm not asking you what's the right answer. I'm asking you what is your opinion? Is it different for girls versus boys? No difference. Same difference. Classic double standard. Should be no difference for both. Boys don't have boobs. Most. It's whatever they feel comfortable doing. If they're forced, never, never, never. If we don't sexualize, it goes for both. Should there be a difference? No. Do I like the difference? Yes. That's a fair answer. My thoughts are do what they want. People have opinions either way. You can't discriminate against women when you're thirsty over men. Whatever they, the idols, feel comfortable with. Shouldn't be a difference. I think, just as I said, it's them acting like little girls but showing butts and boobs. I'm not a fan of objectification in general, but in a patriarchal society, there is a difference. Age group, perhaps. Why is it that when there are dating rumors and scandals, the female idol always bears the brunt of the backlash? Why can we have male idols who are literal criminals continue to receive support and have a career, but a female idol receives hate and death threats over eating a strawberry with two hands? That sounds super specific. Do we really have male idols that are criminals? I mean, this sounds kind of cherry picked. I'm not gonna lie. That, like, I'm sure it's happened, but is that the norm? The dating thing has always been one of the most toxic things about K-pop, but I have hope that it's changing. It's happened often enough. Sexy doesn't necessarily mean you have to be shirtless. It's not the norm. Not normal, but it happens enough. They return to status. Okay. A lot more than you think, but not the norm. Okay. I do think the whole industry is very hypocritical. They expect idols to remain virginal and pure, so they are approachable to the fans while having all the sexy dances and costumes. Girls are often targeted for being sexy, and then boys are praised. Interesting. This is very interesting. I think the way girl idols and boy idols are perceived by audiences are very different, and responses are often different between the two. As a guy with a daughter, I usually ask her how she sees it on both girl and boy groups, and usually what she sees as norm, I may see as too sexual. Interesting. Age differences. Be sexy, but not too sexy. Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Why is it that when there are, oh wait, I read that. Why is it that when leaders of boy groups look angry because something has gone wrong, it's considered sexy or good leadership, but a girl group leader will literally get death threats over it? I think a lot of these comments reflect society in general, but is magnified in the context of K-pop. Hmm. Hard for me as an American female fan, because what I feel US fights for, K-pop is still pushing on the girl groups, and it hurts to see praised. Some male idol have DUIs and still have a career, but when a female idol's gets one, her career is basically over. Kind of shows the difference. Hmm. Oh, okay. The people that consume K-pop that create these specific mentioned toxic environments are also questionable. I look at the costuming during award shows. Guys in full pants and shirts, and the girls in skimpy clothes. They can't even sit without using a blanket to cover their laps, and they look cold. You can tell they're not comfortable. Hmm. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. It's interesting to see we quite mutually agree with stuff, but if we would discuss about specific groups, I bet our answers would be different. Hmm. Okay. What is considered ugly to Korean beauty standards? While the K-pop business does have a dark side like any entertainment business, keep in mind the audience, the consumers also play a role on how healthy or toxic it is. The consumers have a lot of control of the situation. It's the same in Hollywood. I have as much of a problem with male idols being uncomfortable as female idols. There are music videos I can't watch because of watching the behind the scenes and seeing some members uncomfortable with how revealing their clothes are. Choice matters. If a group is being forced to be sexy over choosing to be sexy, I have issues. Okay. So I'm sure some of you are still typing, so feel free to continue your thoughts. So here's kind of where my brain is right now. Because as you can tell from all of this, and I tried to read as much as possible. So, because I like you're reading stuff, you're responding to stuff. I also want to just like be able to audibly have the conversation as well. You can already tell with this conversation that like, and this is what I was hoping for. We're literally taking everything that is part of the conversation and we're throwing it on the table. Everything. And then we're going to kind of sift through that and see what we can make sense of, see what fits, what doesn't fit, and then maybe if there's a chance that some of how we feel about this or how we feel about that is convoluted by other stuff that's kind of related, but it muddies the waters, right? So both sides are out into perfect marketing box that they have to abide by. They're not allowed to be their true selves. They have their own thoughts, dates. If they do, they have to apologize and are shamed for it. It's why there's such a high suicide rate in the industry, I feel like. We need to let these idols beat people. Okay. Okay. So let's see if we can, and this is going to be tricky. Let's see if we can kind of make sense of this in a way. Now, do I think we're going to resolve gender differences today? Probably not. Look at me. Probably not. But I do feel like there's a way that we can at least have this conversation. And even if the conversation ends with like, okay, now we've seen everything that's on the table. There's a lot more involved than I thought. I think that's progress. So here's I guess my next thought. Do you agree with this statement? And I do. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily even really K-pop exclusive. We're talking the entertainment industry as a whole. Music entertainment, not like sports and stuff. Well, music. Does society's expectations have a significant driving factor in how the music industry functions? Yes or no? Does society's expectations have a significant driving factor in the music industry and how it functions? Money drives it all. Yes. A million times over. Okay, so it seems pretty resounding. Celine, thanks for chiming in. First message. Welcome, buddy. It's a circle. Capitalism and money is number one. Jazz, I don't think you're wrong, but I think that society's expectations are what drive capitalism to make the choices that they make because they're playing off of what society wants. And the more people they can please, the more money they're going to make. And that's the driving factor. So I think you're right. It is like a circle. Yeah. They're our version of the dream person in dream life, and that's why we're attracted to it. Okay. They influence each other. I would agree with that. I think that's very, very true. I disagree. I think marketing is about manipulating people. I agree with you 100%. Absolutely. Marketing is absolutely about manipulation. The science behind marketing is impressive, to say the least. Society's own chaos circle. Yeah, deflated volleyball of society. Okay. All right, so here's a question for you. This might, again, honest answer, not what you think the right answer is, honest answer. I want you to take every executive officer in all of these major companies, these major music labels. Every executive team is replaced with a woman. Would things change? What do you think? Obviously, you're speculating. Would things change? Yes or no? We can get a little deeper in a second. Mostly, yes. Not necessarily. That's a safe answer. Yes, but very slowly. No, depends on the women. Not really. No. Maybe not. I don't think so. Not really, a little bit. Okay? Now remember, we're not mentioning people. We're talking generalization, overarching across the board. Probably, but it would take time to undo what's come before. If you swapped today, probably not because of the money that it generates. Not that much. Society is still the same. Yes, but not for long. Snow, thanks for chiming in. Maybe a slight difference. Perhaps it would vary on the specific person. There would be differences of viewpoint. So remember, though, I want to be specific here. I'm not talking about replacing this guy with this woman and then boom. I know there's a chance it's going to change, yay or nay. I'm talking across the board. So you got to figure out, like, yeah, it might be yes here and it might be no here, but as a sweeping generalization, would things change? That's really what I'm going for. That's the question I'm asking, in other words. But the market would still have the last word. I tend to question whoever is in high positions. Changes in some way, yes, doesn't mean better, okay? There are enough women who agree with status quo to potentially be no change. Depends on what society wants. No business is business. I don't know honestly anymore now that I think about it more deeply. It still depends on how the consumers respond. As a whole, no, money and wanting to rise above would overpower. It would take very strong women. If it's driven by society, then the gender of the person wouldn't really make a difference. Interesting. I think women are guilty of getting caught up in the industry too. What makes money makes money. Some fashion stores tried to change. It didn't work. They went back to the old way that is much more sexualized. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Okay, my next question. Now, this is the part where I'm going to kind of warn you a little bit because this is more to do. The warning has less to do with the topic and more to do with how my brain works. So the warning is bear with me while I put these pieces out and we will eventually put them back together into a sensible package, ideally, that we can go with. My next question is, when you talk, when we say things like, and I'll say she, I'm talking a girl group, a member of a girl group, whatever. This girl group is dressed too sexy. A lot of you specified if they're on board with it, I'm okay with it. If they're being forced to do it, I don't like that. The question is, how do you know the difference? Now, your answer could be, I don't. I'm just hoping. It could be, here's why. And then you actually have an answer. Like, how can you tell the difference? They're visibly uncomfortable. Sorry, visibly uncomfortable. You can see it on their faces. You don't. You don't. The thing is, you won't know. It shows on their faces and body language. Unless you watch the behind the scenes, if there is one, how they act and body language. Some can be good actors. We may not know. We don't really know unless they explicitly talk about it or it comes across in a different way. They signed up to be singers, not sexualized. They chose to be idols. That's part of their job. All right, so let me take those two comments. Here's the next question. Okay, you ready for this? I feel like, now think about we have to kind of pause for a sec. Go back to when everybody answered the question about girl groups and what you tend not to like about them specifically. The overarching answer was the scantily clad, the over-sexualization, the objectification. That was like the resounding answer for girl groups. So that tells you that as a whole, like when we think of girl groups, that's what we picture. Are you with me so far? I feel like that's not even a yes or no. That's a yes. We've already established that in previous questions. So if we do a survival show and we put 100 girls out there to be the next idol group, wouldn't it kind of be expected by every one of them that when they think of the girl groups that are the big names that are on TV all the time, that they're going to be in that position? Is that right? I mean, am I weird to assume that? You can say yes. I mean, this is literally what my brain is saying. Internalized, I suppose. Right, so I'm not saying necessarily that the objectification or the sexualization or the sexualized nature of girl groups as a whole, based on your answers previously, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying, do you think that the people that are going on these survival shows, as an example, I feel like they would already kind of know this is what's going to be expected of them. You know what I mean? They know exactly what they're signing up for. When they choose to be a part of the industry, they know what may or may not happen for both girl groups and boy groups. It doesn't mean that they don't want it to change. I totally get that. Totally get that. Just because like issues issues exist and we acknowledge them as issues or whatever else, or we say like, oh, well, that makes sense why it's that way. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't change. Do they, though? How much of the world did you know when you were 13 or 14 years old? No, that's actually a good point. When you're 13 or 14, you think you know everything, you know nothing. I mean, that's the truth. However, if you're going to try out that seriously for a K-pop idol competition, I feel like you know enough to understand kind of where you're going. Now, I do think that's a very broad generalization for sure. Because you don't know all of the things that will be expected of you as the years go on. And then the reality is that it's one thing to understand that this is how the industry works, but it's completely different when you get inside the industry and the machine starts working and you're like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So yes, there are kind of two different dragons that we're kind of talking about. Large part of the problem is they don't realize how little say they have when they start. I think that's true. They just want to be a singer and get surprised later on. Yeah, possible. We are definitely looking at it from a Western lens, though. totally agree. I think the majority of people here, the majority are going to be coming from this side of the prime meridian. So yeah, it is a different lens, right? It can also change though, auditioning for a cutie angel fairy concept, and then later the agency changes the group concept, and the artist can't do anything. So it's really that they don't they don't have the amount of say and control that they thought they would have, they hoped they would have, and what we would like to say as the people cheering them on is they don't have the freedom that they should have. Okay, I get that. Okay. I've watched reactions from men who admire male groups for their content and talent, but then turn into drooling messes when confronted with female groups. Sounds about right. I do that. I kind of do that with both. I like to think. It's the same as football academies in the UK, though. They may they maybe sign their life away and didn't know it and cannot get themselves out of situations easily. I think that's fair. Okay. Okay, so let's pause for a second, okay? Grin, we're at this point we're just kind of throwing everything on the table. The table's a friggin' mess. It's a mess. We've got people's opinions about boy groups, we've got people's opinions about girl groups, we've got societal standards from the east, we've got the aperture that we're looking through, which is generally the West, I think the majority of people here, but also different opinions from around the world as a whole. We have age differences, we have all kinds of stuff. They don't have full control. Okay. So, that being said, with everything that we have on the table now, I feel like with the last couple of questions, we established that society as a whole can have quite an impact on what the music industry as a whole is going to do, what they're going to do to try to make more money, capitalism, like all that stuff. There's going to be a cycle that perpetuates between society and music. And I'll just leave it at music because, like I said, not culturally, but industry wise, like it's this stuff can also apply with sports, with television and acting and all that kind of stuff. Like Judy said, Hollywood is the same. Money is the bottom line. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. So here's where I wanna here's where I wanna pause and potentially make you uncomfortable because you're gonna have to stop and think for a second, and you're gonna have to. Some of you are probably gonna have to think, what's the difference, right? How do I answer this? So it might take you a moment. A lot of your answers about what you don't like about female groups are the the sexualization. But how many times when we watch videos here and we see collarbones and abs and thighs and feet and hands and we want to lick things and touch things with the boy groups, that chat explodes and gets like, we have Carl for a reason. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, what's the difference? Is there a difference? There might not be, but is the question. Again, because I do it too. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm asking legitimately, like, is there a difference? It's also not thrown in our faces with the boy groups. I don't know if I agree with that, Chimber. I think that it could be, it might not be as much, but I think it's still a significant part of the formula, in my opinion. It's the same for me. If they're not comfortable showing anything, they shouldn't. Do I enjoy it? Not always. But again, we go back to, we don't know how they feel. We have no idea. You'd like to think when they're up there, regardless of gender, they're up there, they're taking off their shirt, they're doing body rolls, they're smiling, they're laughing. You like to think like this is what they want to do. It's fun. It's for the fans. They're okay doing it. But we don't know. It's a perception that men enjoy the attention, but that women don't. And there's a major psychological trigger to protect women and feel that men can take care of themselves. That's interesting. We have no idea how they feel. For all we know, it's just a job for them and they're fine with it. Also a fair point. Chat has said they generally don't like sexualization of girl groups, but here during the lives we get third. Oh, you were just saying the question. Thank you. Perry or mods, do me a favor. If I throw a question out there and you, if somebody would type it up and pin it, that would help. Because my brain's going, I can't do it. I think the difference comes from historical reasons. Historically, in a patriarchal society, women are being objectified so much. So now it feels worse to us because we want to get away from that. But the sexualization of men is much more recent and new and doesn't feel so much like a power imbalance. Wow. That is quite a deep answer. With respect to reactions on the couch, my issue is with the line for a girl group or I'm not a fan of girl groups, but. See, now that I want to pause that. I don't want to pause that. I want to take that and I want to put that on my little shelf. I don't think we're there yet. They do it for the fans, but I truly think some of them like it and like showing their body because they worked hard for it, mostly men. I feel like it's just a matter of cultural conditioning and personal attraction. When you find someone attractive, the revealing clothes are more of a positive, while with someone you don't find attractive, you look at with a different lens. I think it's also something to do with the fact that women get more hate from it and men don't. It makes sense that men can take care of themselves, and as a society, we want to protect women. Interesting. Yeah, I do think that is an interesting point. Okay, let me think. So I have something that I want to say, but I also don't want to drive the conversation. Like, I want to guide the conversation as a facilitator, but I don't want to start to steer some of you in a direction. Women want to be taken seriously, but men are usually already taken seriously in society. When women have to play both sides as sexy and smart or hardworking, they are generalized no matter what they do. Men can get away with a lot more. I don't know. Men do have thoughts and feelings too, however, and are allowed to be vulnerable. I compare it to when I go out to bars. The women pick their own outfits to feel sexy or pretty and attract the opposite sex. Some of it is just instinctual, probably highly encouraged by societal norms, but some women feel good dressed like that. Sexualization of women feels degrading in a way, and sexualization of men doesn't as much. It doesn't mean that it's right at all, and maybe it's also just my own feeling. Kathy, I think that's actually a really good answer, mainly because you ended it with like, I don't think it's right. I'm just saying like that's how I feel. Well, that's kind of why I like having these conversations, because most of where all of us are with our answers and our opinions and how we feel about every little piece of this puzzle and other puzzles that we have engaged in is because like, well, this is how I feel, right? So all I want to do with these conversations is really just say, all right, well, this is how you feel and I feel and we feel as a whole, but let's see if we can just go next level and see why we feel that way. That's kind of where my goal is right now. People project their own insecurities and prejudices onto other people all the time as well. Yeah, I feel like that's, yeah. Such contradicting feelings. Okay, so I have a question. Christine says men typically don't get hate for being shirtless, but women get hate for wearing short skirts. Does that mean it's not wrong to sexualize men? No. So here's a question. If there's kind like if you look at everything we've just kind of scrolled through here, on one hand, we as a whole are saying women get hate for how they dress, for being too sexy. If that's the case, why is it still happening at such a grand scale? Because sex sells. So then if sex sells, if it's because that is what's making the money, then does that mean that what's making the money is what the masses and the majorities are after, are seeking? Right? So do women sometimes get hate because they dress too sexy? Yes. But are the more and louder voices the ones who say, no, this is great, we love it, keep going? I mean, is yay or nay? I don't know. These days, women wearing provocative clothes is considered powerful. That's actually a really interesting point I hadn't thought of. That's interesting. Hmm. Because you think about some of this conversation that's happened over the last few years where there has been a pendulum swing on several different directions and several different topics. And yeah, there are some, I don't know if it's just a matter of areas or age groups or whatever, but it's like when somebody is able to have control over their body and they make the choice and they say, this is what I want to wear. It's my body, my control, like my choice. Boom. And this is what I'm wearing, and you're going to deal with it. We consider that powerful. That's, I mean, now granted, I say we, that could be a Western lens, maybe, but that is also something to be considered. As a woman, honestly, I feel like men have more respect and a louder voice in society, so it's often assumed that if they're doing something, it's because they want to. When it comes to women, especially in that industry, I think it's assumed that they don't have as much of a say, regardless of whether that's true or not in each case. Interesting. Sorry, I'm just reading. Hmm. So it may not be about louder voices, just more voices. It is very complex. Yes, that is exactly true. What goes on behind closed doors or in the midst of artists is often unknown until we get an autobiography or documentary. Hmm. Okay. I don't know about you, but I think this is pretty fascinating. I think this is super interesting. Now, here's a wrench in the works. As a general rule, if we're talking about K-pop mainly, many of the artists, especially the females, look incredibly young, so that could lead to an overprotection of them. I agree. I think there's definitely truth to the fact that women have less of a say in the industry than men do. So maybe that impacts it. It could be because of Korean society where men are still higher in the hierarchy in many ways, so they rule, and this is for their entertainment. Also, Korea has a big problem with using faces of girl idols to adult videos. Hmm. Okay. Okay. I don't know if this is going to be a detour or a tangent, but right now it makes sense to me, so I'm going to go for it. Do you remember? I think it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday during the live stream that was like 37 hours long. I had made a comment. Oh, this is actually very related. This is very relatable or relevant. We watched Tyla Water. I had never heard of it, never seen it, knew nothing about it. We watched Tyla. Sexy video, but I was kind of afraid to say something, you're right? And then I made the comment of like, how old is this person? 23? Okay, yes, she's very pretty. Because prior to that, I was like, I don't know how old this person is, and I'm not allowed to say that they're pretty if they're underage, right? And of course, like, and it makes sense. I totally get it. Somebody in the chat was like, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. It shouldn't be that way. I agree with you. I should be able to say, like, hey, I think this person has a pretty face. Like, that kid's cute, you know? But sometimes the internet is going to internet, and it's just the way things work, right? So then we kind of went into a very brief aside to talk about intent and how my opinion was, I think intent is kind of the whole point that a lot of people miss. They ignore it like the word is completely not a word at all, like it doesn't exist, right? Now, I say intent, and I open this jar, if you will, because here's where I'm gonna kind of put myself on the table. Since you all have had a chance to kind of answer everything that I've asked and all of your opinions up to this point, this is what I can tell you in my best articulation of why I think I feel some of the way that I feel with certain groups and certain things that we watched, okay? And a lot of this will also kind of echo what a lot of you have said. So I think that for the most part, many of us will be on a similar page at the very least, right, wrong, or indifferent. but this is me just throwing it out there. When I feel like I actually admittedly when I watch a girl group, I don't even know if I can remember a time per se when I remember watching it and going like, they're too sexualized. Now, not because like I'm a horn dog, but because like to me, it's like it's already part of the formula. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it just kind of comes with the territory, right? I mean, even with the guys do their thing. They pull up their shirts, they do the body roll, show the abs, and get a little hangy shoulder. It just kind of comes with the territory. So that's just part of the formula, right? For me. Where I get uncomfortable, and you've seen me actually get irritated, is when I watch a girl group that does feel young, and they don't necessarily have to be like underage young, but still young enough to be within that realm of they have no control over what they're doing, right? I think part of it for me, honestly, is like some of you have said, my fear is that what they're doing and what they're having to do is not real. It's forced, it's disingenuous, and it's just somebody behind the screens that's making these girls do something to please the greater numbers, right? I don't like that. And maybe it's not right that I feel that way more with the girls over the boys, and regardless of why that is, I have no idea, but I want to keep it kind of focused here. It might be because, and this should not surprise you at all because I'm straight Gryffindor, bro. But like, yes, I consider myself a protector, and I don't want people, regardless of gender, like I don't want people to be in that situation where they're doing something that they don't want to do. They're forced, whether it's contractual or whatever. Yeah, so like I find myself admittedly feeling protective over those people, right? So I do have a visceral response to that. Roscoe, are there any or many women at your workplace? What does the culture there look like with regards to gender equality? I do have women that I work with. I work with women that are weapons instructors, that are driving instructors, jumping out of helicopters, like the whole 9 yards. Yeah. It's like you get the job, you're in there. It doesn't matter what your gender is, like you can do the job, you do the job. That's it. They teach, they jump, they run, they shoot. Yep. So my usual concern now, I want to pause. I want to take that thought of what I just said, that comment of, I think part of my initial reaction is I feel protective of younger girls because the industry can be, as I think Jimmy said, Jimmy said, it can be very savage, right? So part of my being is I want to be protective. Now, some of you can take that and break that apart and be like, that makes you bad. Intent. Like, let's think about this straight. My intent is I want to help. I want to help where I can help, right? So if we take, let me think, how do I say this? Intent isn't the end all be all, but it's a start, I think. If I were 25 again, would you still feel protective? Absolutely. I mean, I was in the military at 17. That's always been just kind of part of who I am. I'm protective of everyone. It just so happens to be that the protective instinct takes a different angle for girls than does for boys. Yeah, and I think that's kind of part of what I'm saying is I understand that it's like it's kind of like it's I don't know if I say it's in my DNA or it's in our DNA. I think it's just how we're conditioned, right? How we're conditioned culturally, each of us is extremely different. Oh, man, it's so tricky. Okay, so if we take here's one thing I've noticed, okay? I'm going to kind of slightly shift gears, but we're still on the same road. We watch a lot of music here, a ton, right? Like so much different stuff too. If you watch any live stream that we have where we're kind of going through Discord requests and different things and we're just kind of like going rogue. If I put on let's just say a new girl group to us, to most of us, we throw them on, start going through, the music's playing, the video's going, the chat's going. I would say the majority of time, even if I don't say anything, the majority of time, chat is going to, let's see, how do I put this? Chat is going to say a lot of the same things that you all said in that initial question of what is it that you don't like about girl groups? That's kind of what chat looks like when a new girl group comes on. Okay, you with me so far? That's not really a question. That's how it is, right? And you can go to any one of the replays and you can see that. But here's the actual question. If I put on XG, or if I put on maybe even Idol or BB, those comments don't happen. What's the difference? Is there like there has to be a difference because it happens in one and it doesn't happen in the other. The question is why? Why is it leadership? Their music has essence. I think people have life experiences and stuff, but a white man cannot and will not define what counts as racist or misogynistic. I feel like I half agree with you. Shiv, I'm sorry, are we boring you? Focus isn't always on the visuals with these groups. They feel like boss. They feel like bosses. You don't want to mess with them. They're less juvenile feeling. Could it be that these groups are older, been around for a while, and have shown more of their authentic self, musically, I mean? XG is fairly new, though. I have experienced this conversation from both sides. When I'm in a context where girl groups are favored, these comments come out towards boy groups. And in contexts like these, they come out more for girl groups. Ultimately, I think it comes down to what you are more familiar with and what and already like to begin with. The longer in the industry, the more choice they get. Okay. So let me give you now my answer to that question. Because I respond like I feel very similarly to what I just described to you. We put on a very new or very young girl group generally, and I feel a lot of the same ways that a lot of you express, right? As far as like it's too poppy, it's too happy for me. I'm not the target audience. It doesn't feel genuine. It feels kind of forced or contrived. I feel that way. I don't feel that way with XG or Idol or I mean even Mamamoo. I mean some of their music, some of their songs aren't really for me, but it feels like it's just a genre instead of something that's been contrived. For me, the difference is with XG and Idol and stuff, I legitimately feel like there is power there. Like they feel powerful. To me, it feels like they are doing what they want to do. They are being a very loud voice for, we have control, we have power. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's just how I feel. So for me, that's the difference, right? Those established groups have a voice. The newer groups seem like they're forced. There's confidence. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah. It might be their age too. Okay. Interesting. Personality dynamics. Hmm. To be fair, a group like Idol has more control in the music and concept they put out now compared to a newly debuted group. Well, that's also part of that's also part of the answer that I'm giving, right? Is regardless of gender, because if you think about it, I recently had to edit a reaction because I completely word vomited at the end of a, who was it? VVV? I think it was VVV. We watched a VVV video. It felt contrived, it felt forced and disingenuous. And I went on this 20-minute diatribe of how I'm like kind of over this machine pumping out music and trying to trick everybody. That's what I did. So I was like, okay, well, that's not really fair to them. It's not about them. It's about what I'm feeling as a whole. This machine just churning people out. And I don't like that. Not only do I suffer as the end user because I'm like, you're just pandering to me, right? You're trying to trick me into spending money into another group, this cookie cutter thing. I'm over it. But worse than that, the people that are involved in the machine that are having to live this life is like, it's they're the real like victims of this, right? The boys, that's right, the boys, VVV, thank you. So for me, it's not just about gender, right? For me, it's the machine. And I don't like what I have seen after 3.5 years of doing this is this machine is just pumping this content out at the, like in some ways sacrificing the mental sanity, the mental health of these people that are involved. In sometimes, I don't think everybody necessarily is a victim, but I do think obviously that it happens. Hmm. So I think that, like I said, going back to the XG thing, The more I can identify, regardless of gender, the more that I can identify if something for me feels like genuine, then I'm kind of on board. I can still say like, the song isn't really for me, but I could get why you like it. I see why you like this video. It just didn't really resonate with me. That to me feels like a fair answer. But sometimes it feels forced, and I don't like that. It actually makes me uncomfortable. How do you know if it's genuine or not? I don't. I just say it feels disingenuous. That's all. That's all. I mean, to me, right or wrong, if something feels like it's a formula, it's cookie cutter, it's like everything else, and it sounds the same, that doesn't feel genuine. It's just, it's not different enough. Maybe that's the best way to say it. It's not different enough. It doesn't stand out to me. That's all. You can feel it. There is a difference between authenticity and artificiality. There can be two poppy and bubbling songs, but they can be giving completely different feelings. Yeah, for sure. I mean, hell, we watched something the other day. I think it was Rise. I was nervous playing Rise. I think it was called Fly Up, because it looked like colorful, vibrant, over-the-top poppy, which is generally not my vibe, but I friggin' loved that. It was just a fun video, and it felt like the guys were having fun. I liked that. I mean, hell, the first Le Seraphim video that I watched, I friggin' loved that. It felt strong. It felt good. It felt like fun. It felt real. Do you think there's a reason why boy group fans usually think new boy groups feel genuine while girl groups do not, and the same the other way? I don't know if I would, is that true? Nigel, thanks for the 5 gifted subs, buddy. You feel that way. Okay. Happens all the time. When they do dances that seem to be made for TikTok challenges, it ruins the dance and MV for me. Yeah, I mean, I commented something like that the other day. It doesn't feel like it's the norm for me per se. I don't feel like that's the most, I don't feel like that's something that's happening so much, but when it does happen, I feel like, ooh, that felt off. Like we watched that one video the other day, whatever it was, and it was like a complete in the video, and it didn't hit me. I didn't like that. But yeah, boy groups do that too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and here's where I want to bring this conversation, right? Because as we've thrown everything on the table and it's a mess, we realize that at the core of this conversation, let's say this, and I'm really going off the top of my head here. I don't have anything planned, obviously, as you could tell. At the core of this is people tend to feel differently about boy groups than they do about girl groups. At the core of everything we're discussing, I feel like that's kind of there. It may not be the atom in the middle of it, but as far as our purposes go, people feel differently about boy groups versus girl groups, right? I feel like that's pretty safe to say. Now, where this gets tricky, and we've seen this, like we've seen it in this conversation, that very simple statement is really solidified by this massive pile of information. And that information is the information coming from different countries, different cultures, different age groups, different upbringings, mindsets, mentalities, preferences, sexual preferences, all of that, right? Boom. That not only solidifies that statement, it also muddies the waters considerably. So once you try to get to this statement of people feel differently about boy groups than they do about girl groups, once you get there and you pull it out of that mess, it's still going to have all kinds of crumbs and nasties, and you shake it up and you try to clean it up, and you're trying to figure out what the hell makes this thing tick, what makes it true. It's hard to get to that point, okay? We are not going to solve in our discussion here. Hell, we could have this discussion every day, and we're never going to get to a resolution, right? And I feel like with all the comments, all the discussions of, well, here's what I don't like about boy groups. Here's what's not fair. Here's what's a double standard. Here's what this culture says. This is where this culture's wrong. This is toxic. This is not toxic. That conversation, those conversations will never end. They won't. And quite frankly, if you look at all these people chatting right here, what this person says can be a completely different thing than what this person says, and they can both be true. Right? Yeah, there's so much history to it, and that's just not within one culture. That is all of the cultures that are involved in this conversation. Not just the chat, but history, the friggin' world. We're not going to solve this, okay? So, what do we do with this information? My goal now is to take, like what we've established now is how messy this is. Period. It's messy. And not even to say that how this person feels is right or wrong, how this person feels is right or wrong. Even those are subjective. So what do we do with it? What would change? Like, how do I put this? It's okay to not solve and continue to discuss openly, fairly, and politely. Couch Crew is amazing at that. Agreed. Yeah, it is about society too. Afnan, you're right. And here's the thing about that. That societal impact is in some ways it's like, I don't know if we're going to get around that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the same way that this system that I have right here in front of me is the system that exists that allows us to do this, where I talk to you and you watch me and then we talk and then we can type, and this is how it is. It could be better, it could be worse, but it's kind of there, and it's kind of where we are. We can improve as we go, but it's kind of what we have to work with. I think the question becomes like, what do we do with the information? So that's actually a good question for you. What do we do with the information? Now that we understand, like, because I feel like some of you say, well, we didn't really make any progress because we all knew it was messy. Well, maybe you did, but did you realize it was as messy as it was? I just prefer deeper, edgier sounds, so I lean towards boy groups. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask chat to stop saying for a girl group, because there are girl group members who literally say they hate when people say that. There's an interview with that to prove it. Well, I think that somebody saying this sounds good for a girl group, I don't think it's necessarily a nice thing to say, but I don't know if it's necessarily worth like banning that phrase. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that somebody that's in a group said that in an interview with you, saying like, they said, oh, I hate when they say that. I totally get it. How many times do you think somebody's saying to me, like, bro, you're actually kind of smart for a Marine? I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, I get it. That kind of makes sense. I get it. I know where it comes from, right? It's not great, but I get it. Is it a sensible thing to say? Big brain, so many times you're going through this, like, I feel like a lot of your comments now are really driven towards like you're mad at society for how you're being treated, but we're literally just talking about like how do we take this boy groups and girl groups and like how do we work with this, right? I know it doesn't make it okay, and I know that intent is not the end all be all per se, but like I feel like it's a start, right? If somebody says something rude to me and they're like, damn, bro, I'm sorry, like that's not what I meant to say. Let me kind of, yeah, at first I may be like, damn, bro, it kind of hurt. But then when they go, oh, hold on, that wasn't my intent. My reaction, I feel like my reaction should be like, okay, you weren't trying to crush my soul, but let's discuss. That word intent or that feeling of intent is to me an open door into us sitting down and now having a conversation after the moment has occurred. Right? I don't think it alleviates accountability. It's still a matter of, okay, well let's discuss. Knowing intent can lead to grace. That's pretty clever. Is that like a quote? That's pretty good. I think it stems. Where did I see that? I think chat is a moving. Oh, I just clicked the wrong button. Sorry. I'm being a bad facilitator. I lost it. For a girl, quote, for a girl is misogynistic. For a girl group is often a commentary on the industry flaws and points out something positive. For me, at the end of the day, it's all about the music and how genuine I feel the artists are, boys or girls. I don't think there is a point to giving general comments about all girl groups every time there is a girl group song on instead of giving specific feedback on the song playing. Trip, I think you're right, but I wonder though if because I feel like based on your comment, you say specific feedback on the song playing. I feel like specific feedback would be like somebody saying this song is too bubbly. I think that's specific feedback. I would say that out loud, but I feel like there could still be people that to them that sounds like a resounding all girl groups are too bubbly. For me, it's just whether I think the song is a bop or not. I try not to think too deeply about it, especially when I don't have all the facts. Yeah, that's a good answer. And some people do like bubbly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And they're okay to do that. Yep. They say you judge someone or something within 10 seconds. We're highly influenced by society and their opinions, so we go into looking at something or someone with pre-existing expectations and opinions. It might change after those 10 seconds, but we still start viewing it from a certain lens. Interesting. I think all groups, no matter their gender, get generalized and put into boxes with their art and music. Yeah, if I'm being honest, I feel like on one hand with girl groups, based on your answers earlier, you could say that if you had to press a button and the most common thing that's said about girl groups, the answer comes up. Boop, and it comes up too sexualized. And then you go to boy groups and you press a button and the answer comes up, and the most common thing that's said is they all sound the same. Like whatever it is, there's going to be something on both sides of those pieces of the puzzle, and it's just a matter of what that answer is, right? And like Tripp said earlier, it just depends on kind of where you are is the answer that you're going to get. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's always going to be a complaint no matter what. We can't make everybody happy for sure. I've had to train myself to not respond immediately to something that gets an emotional response from me initially. I don't always succeed, but I try to step back before responding. That's a good way to live, Lasha. Hmm. Sometimes some people just want to hate a specific group because they're competition, no other reason. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's rivals upon rivals upon rivals. Even when I first started breaking out of just BTS and going out into the whole world of K-pop, um, I was like they forbade me initially. The mods at the time were like, "You will not watch Blackpink. You just won't. They will destroy this channel because the rivalry between BTS and or Army and between Blanks, it's gonna wreck you." But we got there. It happens. We get there. But you can see the concern though. Yeah. Sometimes I see things I don't like, something I don't respect, or something I feel is wrong. There will always be something that someone else will see differently. There's never going to be a solid black and white, right and wrong. Yeah, it's all subjective. Why do Army and Blinks have beef? Competition. That's it. You know, fandoms are going to fandom. That's all. Simple as that. I mean, there's probably deeper reasons, but that's it. All right, hold that thought. Be right back. All right. What did I miss? I once heard a quote that your first thought or reaction was society's, but your second thought or reaction, especially if it was the opposite of that gut reaction, was your own. So I try to examine that first gut reaction before saying something. For someone who just came in, I think I'm doing okay. That's a good answer. So in a perfect world, in a realistic world, actually, let me back that up. In a perfect world, I could play a video here of boy groups and girl groups, and the responses would not be different at all. The complaints would be the same for both. The opinions would be about the same for both in a perfect world. I don't think anytime soon that's going to happen. I just don't. I don't think we're going to completely, I don't think we're going to get that far. But in a realistic world, what does that look like? Is it a matter of just like pausing for a second and thinking, okay, am what I'm about to say, like if I got a girl group playing, right? If you start to type, this is pretty good for a girl group, and you pause for a second, you say, okay. Could you say, this is pretty good, and send? Does it accomplish the same thing? You know what I mean? Can you say something that's just a statement versus all girl groups? You know what I mean? Does it accomplish the same thing? If you say, I don't really like girl groups, but so on. Could you take out that first part and just be like, I like them? Right? It would be better maybe to say this is good for something that's not usually my cup of tea. Sure. Without generalizations. Right. So while I feel like of the 177 of you in here, I feel like it's probably safe to say that many of you or some of you, however many, will agree with something like that. Like, well, okay, maybe it's best if we just pause for a second. It doesn't really have to be about boys or girls. I can just say my statement and leave the gender out of it, right? That's possible. Maybe with the magic wand, wherever my Harry Potter wand is, that is the answer. I don't know if that's going to happen, to be honest. Like, maybe that's a good way to go. That's something we should all be doing anyway. Yeah, give it a chance. Try not to generalize. I think it's a good direction to go. Yeah, it's a start. Yeah. That's probably the best way to say it. But here's what I worry about, though. Not though. This is my concern, because I've seen this happen before. Actually, before I say that, lesson here is to be mindful of your comments. It's okay to have an opinion, just not a targeted or attacking one in the chats, and take into mind gender prejudice as much as possible. Just remember how your comment will come across to others. Think twice before you post. And as Tasia said, just don't be an ass about it. That sounds pretty good. Even made an announcement. Nice. So going back to my statement that was birthing, if you will, I've gone through reactions Like, forget about genders for a sec, but in my reactions through the years, there have been points where I wanted to say something as like, this is my opinion. It's going to be a wicked hot take. You're not going to like it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Where I might say something like, this dancing is not cutting it for me. And let's say it's a boy group. This dancing, it's messy, it's sloppy. Maybe I'm spoiled by K-pop, but this dancing ain't working. And I couldn't say it because everybody would eat me alive. That was earlier. Now, I don't really care so much, right? Now I say it, and I'm like, here's my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. You're watching me for my reaction, so here's my reaction. There you go. Take it for what you will. But what I also worry about is, because I have experienced this from my side too, if I watch, for example, a girl group, and I have, let's say, 5, 8, 10 people, and something about some of the voices or the tones or the harmonies, I'm just not digging, and I say, I'm just not digging it, it's not necessarily because they're women. It's because I don't like the sound. That's all. It's my opinion. That's it. When we try to like take these moments of community discussion and say, hey, how can we be a little bit better going forward, right? Us saying like, let's just slow down a little bit. And we don't necessarily have to say, hey, for a girl group, these guys are pretty good. We don't have to do that. That's easy. But we also have to be careful not to create a space where you can't say anything. You can't have an opinion. You know what I mean? Yeah, not everything is everyone, and that's it. Yeah, we've always navigated these things really well, I feel, because they're so tricky. It's so tricky. And even if we're not going to get it right, I think the fact that we're trying, the fact that we're having the conversation, we're trying to be open-minded and move forward in some positive direction, even if it is just one step, I think is progress. But yeah, very, very tricky, very complex. Yeah, open minds. Open mind you. Where is the line between being able to voice your opinion and people reading into it and assigning intent to a comment that is benign? It's tough. That's a really great point. Yeah. And I think part of that comes from it comes from people's responses. So like if I say, um, I'm listening, let's say I'm listening to a Killing Voice and it's a girl group, and I say, because the voices are a lot easier to hear in a Killing Voice. I say like, this song was a little pitchy for me. I wasn't vibing with this song. First two were okay. This one felt a little pitchy. Somebody could take that and be like, every girl group gets this. I'm so sick. And they just explode. Well, that to me is how they are responding to my comment. They're making a general, that comes down to back and forth. Like that's an individual thing. And it's, we just got to take it on a case by case basis, really. Because unfortunately, I don't think there will be a definitive answer. Just like I don't think we can, we can't take a conversation like this and then all of a sudden they like, all right, here are 4 new rules. Do. And then we do that as best we can. And then 3 months later, here are 5 more rules from that 4. Do. Before you know it, those walls close in, and then you end up in the wrong direction. And that is not what we're trying to do. Just a step in the right direction, that's all. Yeah. Sometimes you agree to disagree. That's it. Yeah. And also, I do feel like it's important that and this is just kind of a comment for all of us, because even I've caught myself in this. When you hear something you don't like, or you read something you don't like, you have to be careful. Like I say, we have to be careful not to take that and then extrapolate it into this massive thing, this massive mess of like, well, if that's true, that must mean this. Like somebody just said, Roscoe hates girl groups. How did you get to that? No, that's not true at all. And I think, unfortunately, like people are going to do that sometimes. It is what it is. But people will also find out like this just isn't the community for you, you know? I mean, it's tough. But I feel like one thing most people will say about us, we may not always get it right, but we're friggin' trying. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying, man. Santi, I will time you out with language like that. Yeah, we're always growing, and we're always going to grow. We may not always get it right, but we're trying. And there have been people, and there will always be people that will come into this community with an idea of like how things are and how they work. And then over time, they'll be like, it feels different. I don't know if it's for me anymore. And then they move on. That's okay too. You know what I mean? This community and this channel is going to evolve and shape. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Sometimes we do right, sometimes we do wrong. But again, going back to like our intention is to grow. It's to make progress. Growing pains. Yep, it's called growing pains for a reason. Yeah. Seasons change. Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right. Quite a roller coaster of a conversation, right? That's probably the easiest answer, or the easiest question I will ask you today. Just remember though, you know, a lot of you like the way that we have these conversations, and you like the fact that we can have differing opinions, we can get irritated with each other, we can disagree on this and that and whatever else, because we come from different everything. Most of us come from different everythings. But at the end of the day, we're still here and we're still doing stuff, right? You can absolutely carry this on to your everyday life, your offline life. There's nothing different, you know? And I think part of that goes back to the conversation where I talked about intent. If somebody hurts me in some way and they say, "Whoa, I'm sorry, like that wasn't my intent." If I stop that and then go, "Nope, F you," and I turn around and walk away and I completely shut that door, I'm the problem in that equation. You hear me? If you do that, you are the problem in that equation. Hold for a second, have a conversation. Don't make assumptions. Don't be like, you can have some conflict. You can argue back and forth, but you're never going to find resolution unless you engage in the conversation. The conversation has to exist for people to grow. And just too many times I've seen people just be like, "Nope, forget it," and then they disappear. Never a conversation. It doesn't work that way. Real life don't work that way. It shouldn't. So, yep. I don't like these K-pop related ones, honestly, because I get why it's necessary. The territory just gives me anxiety because fandoms. Shiv, I agree with you because I felt that way for a number of years. And then finally I just said, you know what, like IDGAF. I don't care. I've gotten the death threats. I've gotten the messages. I don't care. I don't care. Like everybody's going to have their moment where somebody's pissed off. You're going to piss off this person. You pissed off this fandom. If it's not this fandom, it's this fandom. I don't care. I don't care. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Yep. Everybody's going to get their 15 minutes of fame, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. The crowd moves on. I mean, let's be honest. If you say something that's your opinion, and unless it's like, if you're trying to be a complete turd biscuit and you're trying to piss people off like a troll, you might have what's coming to you because you wanted that kind of attention. But if you're just generally saying a relatively respectful, like neutral opinion that people don't like and they come at you, those people are sick. They're not right anyway. So they will, and they will all the way past you. Don't pay them any mind. In case you didn't get that, it was, that's pretty much how it goes. Yep. Your head hurts? Hey, me too. Yep. Yep. So I don't know if this conversation helped or if it helped any of you or hurt any of you or if you feel like there's progress or not. I have no idea. But at the very least, I wanted to have the conversation. I just wanted to throw everything on the table and make an absolute mess, even if at the very least it was for us all to see that this is an incredibly complex scenario and we're just trying to make a step in the right direction. Food for thought. Absolutely. Yep. And insightful. Yeah. Yep. Makes you think. That's it.